Hi, I'm Kat and let's just get on with today's video. So the word in Romanian for today is copil. 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 Well done guys, you just said child. Now I do have a question. Child protective services should be obvious what it is, right? By definition, Child Protective Services provides protection for children who are at risk of or are experiencing neglect, physical, sexual or emotional abuse. The focus is on the safety of the child and supports for parents to strengthen families and promote safe, nurturing homes for children. There you have it. I mean, it's quite straightforward, isn't it? But it seems that lately Child Protective Services provides exposure for children who are at risk, exposure for them to actually experience exactly what the definition says they shouldn't. And today's case is just another tragic example of the death of a baby which could have been prevented. Maddox A. Williams was born on 9th of January 2018 and he was a sweetheart of a baby. He had a great sense of humor. He loved to help around the house. He liked dusting, he liked vacuuming. He was just a ray of sunshine. He liked to eat chicken nuggets and really enjoyed children's shows like Paw Patrol, Cocomelon and Baby Shark. He even had Paw Patrol characters on his pull-up diapers whilst potty training. Baby Maddox was born to Jessica Trifetin, also known as Jessica Williams, and to Andrew Williams. Jessica and her 5 children, including Maddox, lived at the end of a dirt road branching off Cape Jellison Road, Stockton Springs, in the US. There was a porch built onto the front of the mobile home and an abandoned attachment in the back, which was separated from the main residence by a hanging blanket. Jessica, she grew up in Stockton Springs, which is a small coastal community of 1,600 people on the border of Belfast and Bucksport. As a teenager and while into her 20s, Jessica was actually a drug addict. At one point, she met Jason Trifetin, who also lived in Stockton Springs, and she had 3 children with him. Years later, Jessica met Andrew Williams, who was living in Belfast at the time. Andrew also battled substance use issues and he suffered from PTSD after watching his father shoot himself when Andrew was 18 years old. Andrew's relationship with Jessica was a complicated relationship because of their emotional and also mental health struggles and the children that they had with other partners. Andrew had a young daughter with someone else, but despite their differences, they did get married. However, their relationship was volatile. In 2017, Jessica became pregnant with Andrew's child and the baby was expected in late March 2018. In December 2017, Jessica began having complications with her pregnancy. She was in hospital and doctors told her that she needed to stay in there, otherwise her baby will be born prematurely. But Jessica didn't listen and 2 weeks after leaving the hospital, on January the 9th, she gave birth to a baby boy whom she named Maddox. He was 11 weeks early and his weight was less than 3 pounds. Nurses placed Maddox in an incubator to keep him warm. Pads on his chest monitored his heart and oxygen levels. By this point, Jessica and Andrew were separated. However, they did spend time at the hospital with baby Maddox. The Department of Children's Services received a report from a healthcare provider following Maddox's birth. Jessica had used prescribed methadone during her pregnancy. Maddox was born at 30 weeks and he remained hospitalized following his birth. Medical staff also reported that the day after Maddox was born, Jessica went to the parking garage of the hospital where she ingested a tramadol from an old prescription. The report was then referred to public health nursing. After almost 2 months of specialized care, Maddox was released to the care of his mother, Jessica. Victoria Rose, Andrew's mother, who was baby Maddox's father, begged the social worker not to allow Jessica to leave the hospital with Maddox because she was really worried about her grandson. Victoria knew that Maine, the HHS Office of Child and Family Services, had been involved with some of Jessica's other 4 children going back several years. But when Maddox was 2 months old, he was released from the hospital and he went to live with Jessica and her previous partner Jason Trifatin and their other 3 children. In February 2018, DHHS received a report from a healthcare provider expressing concern that Jessica abruptly left a doctor's appointment for Maddox, and the healthcare provider was concerned that she might not follow through on medical care for Maddox as a result of being upset. This report was screened out. Just a few weeks after Maddox was taken home, the police were called to the home. The Waldo County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call on 22nd of March 2018 at 2:05 p.m. reporting that a child overdosed on methadone. Stockton Springs police officer Michael Larivee rushed to the trailer at 30 Cross Lane, and when he arrived, he found Jason on the phone talking to the 911 dispatcher. Jason was in a panic trying to get help because the child who overdosed was his 2-year-old son. As the ambulance took the boy to a hospital, the police officer contacted Children's Services to report the incident. At that point, it wasn't clear whose methadone was involved. DHHS received a report from law enforcement that the 2-year-old had ingested liquid methadone and the family failed to seek medical treatment for 20 minutes. This child was administered Narcan in the ambulance and taken to the hospital. DHHS Children's Services requested and obtained a preliminary protection order which placed Maddox in his father's custody and Maddox's siblings in the department's custody on the day following this incident. The department made findings of substantiated neglect against Jessica and Jason as a result of this incident. A jeopardy order or a protection from harm order regarding Maddox and his siblings was entered by the court on July 16, 2018 with Jessica's and Jason's agreement. The court decided the risk of harm was based on domestic violence and untreated substance use issues. Maddox remained with Andrew, his father, his biological father. Jason's history of substance use was identified as an issue and he was ordered to complete an intensive outpatient program. He began the program in the summer of 2018 but didn't finish it until April 10, 2019 as he failed to produce negative drug screens and he missed several sessions. At discharge, he was recommended outpatient treatment and counseling. Another issue was Jessica's history of substance use and mental health issues. Her engagement in services was deemed acceptable. Social services removed all of the children from the home, including Maddox, who was now 2 months and a half. Child protective workers contacted Maddox's father, Andrew, asking him to get Maddox. At the time, Andrew and his young daughter from his other relationship were living with his mom, Victoria. In June 2019, DHHS received a report during the open case after Jessica gave birth to a new baby. The DHHS got custody of that baby because of Jessica's substance use and the risk of harm with the other children. Over the next 2 years, until February 2020, Victoria, the grandmother, devoted herself to her grandson Maddox. Jessica and Andrew divorced and Jessica began using the last name Trifatin. She only saw Maddox once over the next 24 months due to the restrictions on her visits. She actually wanted to bring Jason as well to the supervised visits, but Andrew disagreed. So that's why she only saw Maddox once, instead of, like any other mother would probably, to actually make an effort and go to those visits without Jason. In the end, it was for her son Maddox to see him, but obviously she didn't. Maddox was flourishing with his dad and his grandmother. He gained weight, he grew stronger, and Andrew simply loved spending time with him. But Andrew was also struggling with the PTSD. Although he was doing well whilst living with Victoria, his mom, at some point something happened, and when he was on his own, he wasn't doing that well anymore. The case regarding Maddox was dismissed by the court on 21st of January 2020, with Maddox remaining with Andrew, his father, pursuant to a parental rights and responsibilities order included in a divorce judgment between his parents, which was entered in the Belfast District Court. The case regarding Maddox's siblings continued until they were reunified in April of 2020. On January 28, 2020, Andrew was caught breaking into a Rockland apartment. Police reports say that the man who was living in the apartment heard the child cry, and when he went downstairs, he found Andrew holding a small child in one arm and a box of speakers and other items in his other arm. Andrew was under the influence of drugs. The child that he was holding was Maddox, his son. Worried about Maddox, the police officer at the scene called the DHHS to the scene to take care of 2-year-old Maddox, as he wasn't appropriately dressed for the weather. Just a week after the court dismissed the case involving Maddox, DHHS received another report from law enforcement. It was reported that Andrew had been arrested after he was found breaking into the home while under the influence of substances. Stolen items were found in Maddox's stroller, and Maddox was in Andrew's arms in one of the homes when law enforcement discovered him. Andrew was found in possession of several substances. Law enforcement invoked interim care and called the department for an immediate response. The department, Child Protection Services, obtained a preliminary protection order granting the department custody of Maddox on the day the report was received. Maddox was initially placed with his paternal grandmother, Victoria, but the court granted custody to Jessica, his mother, on 12 of February 2020. Andrew was required by the court to complete a substance use evaluation and level of care assessment, as well as a mental health evaluation. He was ordered to follow all treatment recommendations that resulted from the evaluations and assessment. As part of his treatment, he was also required to attend random drug screens. On 12 of February 2020, DHHS and the judge agreed that Maddox should be returned to his mother. Jessica had only seen her son one time in 2 years. She was a complete stranger to Maddox. Over the next several months, Victoria and Andrew, who was out on bail for charges related to the January burglary, tried to see Maddox, but Jessica didn't allow it for a few months. Andrew was supposed to have Maddox every other Friday, but Jessica just wouldn't allow it. Victoria, the grandmother, was constantly worried about Maddox when he was with his mom, and she would contact Waldo County Sheriff's Office for welfare checks, and eventually Victoria and Andrew were allowed to see Maddox, after the judge said that Jessica would go to jail if she didn't allow Andrew to have him. But the visits with Maddox ended when Andrew was arrested on March the 7th, 2020. Police reports say that he was intoxicated while driving with Maddox and another child in the car. Released on bail, Andrew was arrested once again in Warren on March 18th and charged with illegal hunting and possession of a firearm by a prohibited person. In March, during the last time that Andrew saw Maddox, he noticed his son had bruises on his back and a cut over his eye. He took photos of the injuries to make sure that he wasn't the one blamed for them. When Andrew asked Jessica about the marks, she said that her 4-year-old son threw a toy at Maddox. After Andrew's arrest in March, Jessica refused to allow Victoria to see her grandson Maddox. Whenever she would call her asking to see him, she always said that either she was too busy, making excuse after excuse. The pandemic, work, Maddox was sleeping, and so on. On Thursday, April the 8th, at 1:25 p.m., the Stockton Springs Police Department responded to a domestic violence report at the trailer where Jessica and Jason Trifatin lived with their 3 children and Maddox. According to Officer Jonathan Shaw, Jason was arrested for assaulting Jessica. All 4 children were there. DHHS was contacted once again. Jason was placed under a court order not to have contact with Jessica. Over the next month, Victoria continued to call Jessica asking to see her grandson Maddox. Sometimes she would talk to Maddox on the phone. She asked how he was doing with his potty training and promised to buy him some pull-up training underwear. The last conversation that Victoria had with Jessica was in June. She told her that they were going camping for 2 weeks and she would be able to see Maddox after they returned. On 29th of September 2020, after an amended divorce judgment, Andrew and Jessica were awarded shared custody of Maddox. In December 2020, DHHS received a new report from law enforcement regarding Jessica and Jason. Allegations included possible substance use in Jason's home and a physical altercation between the 2 of them. During this investigation, it was learned that there was an altercation between Jessica and Jason, but the details were unclear. While both of them admitted to verbal conflict, they offered different accounts of whether it became physical. During his interview with DHHS, Andrew, Maddox's father, said that he was unhappy that Jessica wasn't allowing him to take Maddox as stipulated in their divorce judgment. He said that he planned to take Jessica to court in February, seeking to find her in contempt for failing to comply with their custody agreement. Jessica completed drug screens during this investigation and she tested positive for THC and her prescribed methadone. During the investigation, both Jessica and Jason refused to sign most releases presented to them by DHHS and would not allow the children to be fully interviewed. DHHS contacted the children's primary care provider, who indicated that they were behind on their well child checkups but expressed no other concerns. DHHS followed up with the parents on this and they reported that there were some delays because of COVID. Based on the information DHHS was able to gather, there were insufficient grounds to make findings against Jessica or Jason regarding any of the children's safety and well-being, or to pursue court intervention. In March 2021, DHHS received a report from law enforcement regarding Andrew. A local business called police to report that he was in their building under the influence. Police responded, they reviewed surveillance footage and based on what they saw didn't believe that Andrew was safe to drive a vehicle. They found him at home. Maddox and an older half-sibling were in the vehicle when police arrived. They noticed Andrew stumbling, unable to dial his phone or determine who to contact, and unable to make a plan for the children's safety. Andrew told police that he had taken prescribed medication, Suboxone and Xanax. He was arrested. DHHS found that Andrew was a threat to physical abuse and neglect to Maddox and his other child. Maddox was taken by the police to the home of paternal relatives and his paternal aunt later picked him up. Maddox was observed by DHHS at his aunt's home on March 7, 2021, and he appeared to be happy and healthy. He was active, playing with the other children, and had no visible marks or bruises except for a scratch on his hip, allegedly from a cat. Jessica, Maddox's mom, was contacted by DHHS on March 7, 2021 and reported that she wasn't willing to participate in a safety assessment or allow the child welfare caseworker into her home. She said she had recently been assessed by the department and there were no findings, and the judge had already decided her children were safe in her care. The caseworker tried to meet with her and ask her to have the assessment, but Jessica said that she was going to get her child from his aunt's house regardless. So Jessica took Maddox on March 8, 2021. 3 days after the initial report, DHHS was able to meet with Jessica at her home after she agreed to have the assessment. According to DHHS, there were no concerns in the home with either of the children. Jessica and Jason engaged in interviews, but they refused to allow the department to complete interviews with the children. Jessica said that she had been held in contempt of court for not returning Maddox to Andrew, but she said she didn't return him because she was concerned that Andrew was possibly using substances. She had tried to obtain a protection from abuse order on behalf of Maddox, but was denied. She also began the process of changing the amended divorce judgment to ensure Maddox's safety in light of Andrew's apparent substance use and pending criminal charges. The department opened a service case to monitor and support the family as Andrew's criminal cases were adjudicated and as Jessica and the mother of Andrew's other child were looking to change the other family matter orders. Several attempts were made by the caseworker with Jessica to have contact with Maddox and his siblings during the open service case. Jessica would either fail to respond or not make herself available for the visits. Based on the information DHHS was able to gather, there were again insufficient grounds to pursue court intervention to compel Jessica's engagement with DHHS. In April 2021, during the service case, DHHS received a new report from law enforcement. Jessica had called 911 reporting that Jason, her partner, shot her and threatened to kill her. Maddox and his siblings were present in the home during this incident. Police saw red marks on Jessica where she said that she was pushed. They arrested Jason and charged him with domestic violence assault. The responding officer reported that the children were visibly upset. The oldest child was crying and holding the younger children. The officer also reported that the home was very messy. Jessica told the officer that Jason was using heroin. As a result of this incident, the DHHS made an indicated finding of emotional abuse against Jason. Jessica refused to allow the DHHS to interview the children, but she did allow the caseworker to observe them. This observation on April 9, 2021 was the last day that the DHHS saw Maddox, who was sleeping during the observation. The caseworker didn't notice any marks or bruises and Maddox appeared comfortable. Jessica also refused to allow the caseworker to go to her mother's home to observe or speak with one of the older children. The department tried to contact Jason, including by mail and phone, to meet with him. He did return the phone calls but didn't want to meet. Based on the information the department was able to gather, there were yet again insufficient grounds to pursue court intervention to compel Jason's engagement with the department. On Sunday, June 20th, 2021, Jessica and her mother, Sherry Johnson, brought Maddox to the Waldo County General Hospital in Belfast. Maddox was not breathing and had no pulse when he arrived. Doctors were unable to resuscitate him. Jessica told the hospital emergency room staff that Maddox was knocked down by a dog. He was caught in the leash, dragged and then kicked by his 8-year-old sister. After hospital staff told Jessica that Maddox had died, she ran away. She stayed at a friend's home and then at her mother's house. She stopped using her credit cards and her cell phone so she couldn't be tracked. It took police 3 days to find her. Although the hospital notified law enforcement about Maddox's death, Maine State Police Trooper Luke Martin said that Jessica's ex-husband Jason had called police earlier that day to report that Jessica abused Maddox and was taking him to the hospital. Jason was living in a camper next door to Jessica's mobile home at the time. DHHS received a report on 20th of June from medical staff who reported that Jessica went to the hospital with Maddox, indicating that he was kicked in the stomach by a sibling and pushed or pulled to the ground by a dog. Jessica said that following these incidents, Maddox walked into the home complaining of stomach pain and saying that he was thirsty. She didn't like how he looked and that's when she decided to get him to the hospital. She said that when she arrived at the hospital, Maddox stopped breathing and was unresponsive in the parking lot. The medical staff reported that they found Jessica's story strange because Maddox was pale, cold and his pupils were dilated and not reactive to light. Medical staff observed bruising all over Maddox's body, including swelling on part of his head. His abdomen was tense, indicating abdominal trauma. He was in full cardiac arrest and couldn't be revived. Jessica left the hospital approximately 10 minutes after Maddox was pronounced dead. DHHS conducted an investigation in coordination with police, including interviewing family members and other contacts. Police had interviewed the other children before the caseworker's arrival. The siblings didn't provide information consistent with Jessica's report to medical staff at the hospital. Jason was interviewed as well, and he reported that he didn't see the incident described by Jessica or anything else of concern. Andrew, Maddox's father, had been incarcerated for over 9 weeks and had no recent contact with Maddox. The DHHS completed a background check on Jessica's mother. She had no criminal history except for a 1982 conviction for negotiating a worthless instrument and the 1998 conviction for harassment by phone. She had no adverse driving history and was not on the sex offender or the child abuse registry. A walkthrough of her home was completed and it was found to be safe and appropriate. Jason signed the safety plan, placing the other children in the care of Jessica's mother for the night. Jessica wasn't available to engage in the safety planning process as she could not be located by law enforcement. While Jessica was avoiding police, Main Deputy Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Lisa Fanti was conducting an autopsy that revealed Maddox's injuries. He had extensive bruising, 3 missing teeth, and a broken spine, a ruptured bowel, all indicative of inflicted injury. Partially healed abrasions were found on Maddox's face and forehead, which were covered with temporary stick-on tattoos. There was also deep tissue bruising on his buttocks and internal bleeding in his abdomen and brain. The injuries were just not consistent with a fall or being knocked down. The medical examiner said that Maddox's injuries were consistent with battered child syndrome, and he died from blunt force trauma. Based on this information, DHHS sought a preliminary protection order from the courts, and custody of Maddox's siblings was granted to the department. All 3 children were placed in foster homes. The department also coordinated with the Sperm Week Center for Safe and Healthy Families and the local hospital to complete comprehensive physical examinations of each sibling. Victoria learned of her grandson's death after her daughter heard that Maddox passed away. Victoria had to call the state police to find out what happened. Then her son Andrew called her and she thought that he knew. He was at the time at the Knox County Jail and he had no idea that Maddox, his son, died. Victoria was the one who told him what happened. Jessica was charged with depraved indifference murder. She was pregnant at the time, expecting her 6th child. Her other 3 young children are now 9, 5, and 3 years old, and it's unclear where they were placed after Maddox died. It was later learned by DHHS that Maine State Police obtained photos from surveillance cameras outside the home of Jessica at her mother's home on the night of June 20th, 2022, the same day that Maddox died, and the morning of 21st of June 2022. Based on the timestamp on these images, it was clear that Jessica's mother allowed Jessica to be in the home with the children who were there pursuant to the safety plan and were temporarily placed for the night with Jessica's mother. The safety plan specified that Jessica's mother was not to allow contact with Jessica until she could be assessed by DHHS. It further specified that if Jessica attempted to make contact with the children, her mother would notify DHHS and law enforcement. Jessica's mother later told police that Jessica had been at her home. Now, check this out. Based on its investigation, DHHS made the following findings: substantiated neglect by Jessica's mother to all of the children, substantiated physical abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect by Jessica to all of the children, substantiated neglect and emotional abuse by Jason to all the children, and substantiated physical abuse by Jason to Maddox. This came after, 2 years of the DHHS finding nothing? Remember, constantly closing the case, insufficient evidence. But now that a baby died, they found substantiated abuse. It only took what? It only took for a baby to die. It's just unbelievable. Maine State Police found traces of Maddox's blood in Jessica's home in Stockton Springs, on washcloths in the living room, on the back of a recliner, on the seat of a chair, and on 2 damp towels in front of the washing machine. Jessica was arrested on 23rd of June 2022 and she was charged with depraved indifference murder. When questioned by officers, she claimed that Maddox bruised very easily and her kids play wild and crazy. During the trial, Jessica's older daughter also testified. Maddox was treated differently from Jessica's other children. Jessica would use makeup and fake tattoos to cover bruises on Maddox's face, but not for the other children. She would also call him names and sometimes slap him across the mouth. While on a family vacation in New Hampshire, the girl said that she saw her mom throw Maddox out of the hotel bathroom. Christine Begwin-Fernald, an emergency room nurse at Waldo General Hospital, was one of the employees who spent an hour trying to resuscitate Maddox the day that he was brought in. While some nurses worked on chest compressions, she was helping inject epinephrine to restart his heart. In court, she was shown 2 photos of Maddox. He was pale, thin, his stomach was tight and distended, covered in fingerprint-shaped bruises. A large bright orange temporary tattoo of a cartoon tiger was seen on his forehead. Christine said that Jessica didn't even cry when hospital staff told her that Maddox was dead. But some records indicate that she did have a reaction. A doctor's note mentioned she was distraught as expected, especially when hospital staff told her that they ceased resuscitation efforts. I don't know, was she distraught because Maddox died, or was she distraught because Maddox died and she knew that she made that happen? 2 weeks after his son's death, Andrew was convicted of several charges related to burglarizing the Rockland home and driving under the influence. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison. A judge denied his request to be released to attend his son's funeral. Victoria and other family members held a private service for Maddox. She often visits her grandson's grave in the cemetery near her home in Warren. Sometimes Maddox's older sister goes with her and they bring a bottle of bubbles so they can blow tiny water balloons over his grave. Victoria has had difficulty sleeping since her grandson's death. She thinks about his struggle as a premature baby, his short, difficult life, and his horrendous death. She said, quote, "He was only 20 pounds. He was tiny. I can't comprehend that someone could hurt him like this, break his spine. His death could have been prevented if somebody could have just spoken up. He was a sweet, good boy, and now the only thing I can think about are the horrific injuries and the pain he suffered." End of quote. Assistant Attorneys General Leanne Zania and John Reisler asked the court to sentence Jessica to 55 years behind bars. Quote, "It's simply unbearable to think of a young child wholly dependent on his adult caregiver being viciously beaten to death by that caregiver. Maddox's death has deeply affected all that knew him, as well as those who tried to save his life. The impact of Maddox's death is far-reaching and will be remembered for many years to come, including by those individuals who served as jurors." End of quote. In October 2022, a jury found 36-year-old Jessica Williams, aka Jessica Trefethen, guilty of depraved indifference murder in the death of her 3-year-old son, Maddox Williams. She was sentenced in December to 47 years in prison. To be convicted of depraved indifference murder means the defendant was found to demonstrate a depraved indifference to the value of human life that proved the reason for the victim's death. Sherry Johnson, Jessica's mother, was also charged with obstruction for helping her daughter conceal her whereabouts from the police after Maddox's death. Maddox's death is one of 5 child homicides that happened in 2021 in the state. It was the deadliest year on record for children who have been involved with the state's child protection system under the Office of Child and Family Services. More than 2,000 children died, although not all were homicides, and the deaths sparked outrage at the state legislature. The Government Oversight Committee voted in September to subpoena DHHS records from Maddox's and 3 other cases to view confidentially months after state lawmakers agreed to strengthen an independent office tasked with investigating complaints against Child Protective Services. Jessica's trial is also the first since a Maine law took effect last summer ordering state courts to prioritize child homicide cases. Maddox Williams was one of more than 2,000 children who died in 2021, with cases flagged by the Department of Health and Human Services, the DHHS. And this is sadly the tragic story of Maddox. I can't believe that, well, I think that by this point we should start to believe, but still I can't believe that a mother would blame the family dog and her other child for a toddler's death, which she had a hand in. Clearly she did have a hand in. I don't even know, I don't even have the words, but I just find it unbelievable that a mother makes such a difference between the children. Maddox was treated very much differently than the rest of the children. She used makeup and she used temporary tattoos to cover his bruises. She ran from the hospital 10 minutes after he was declared dead at the hospital. Even then, she still was not remorseful of what happened. She ran. And I'm really glad that her mom was charged with obstruction of justice, because she knew that she wasn't supposed to help her daughter. And yes, I get it. Okay, as a parent you help your child and so on and so forth. But not at the expense of the younger grandchildren that you already have in your house. I don't think I would do that. I think that if it would be me prioritizing between my child and my grandchildren who are babies, I don't think I would prioritize my child. I think that I would rather prioritize my grandchildren. I mean, I'm not the grandmother, so obviously I can't really speak for her, but I think that, I don't know, it kind of makes sense in a way, unless I'm thinking it wrong. But either way, Maddox's death could have been prevented. Just how many times did they close the case with no evidence? It only took for social services to wait for Maddox to die at the hands of his mother before they found sufficient evidence of abuse and neglect and so on. It's just, whatever happened to prevention is not prevention anymore, is it? Is working to fix the problem after the problem happened, rather than prevent the problem from happening from the get-go. You know what I mean? I don't know what the saying is for that, but anyway, I think that you get what I mean. Yeah, it's tragic, it's sad, and it's even more tragic that Maddox's siblings had to witness everything that happened, and basically they witnessed how Maddox lost his life. And again, it's still unbelievable to me that she would blame the family dog and the older sibling for Maddox's death. I can't. Please guys, do let me know what do you think in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and for now, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!